Hey guys, tonight we travel back, way back to the sunlit marshes and crumbling cities of ancient Mesopotamia. You're standing in the shadow of two great rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates. Their slow brown waters glinting under a cloudless sky. The air smells like wet clay crushed reeds, and something faintly metallic bronze maybe, or just the scent of old sweating stone. It's hot. You wipe your forehead with the corner of your tunic, but it doesn't help much. The sun here doesn't just shine, it interrogates. Your sandals squelch in riverbank mud that's been trodden for millennia, while flies seem to follow you like curious spirits. You're in Sumer, in the cradle of civilization, and whether you're ready or not, history is about to hum you to sleep. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere far away, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I always love hearing from sleepy travelers around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge slowly toward the city of Uruk. Not the sprawling metropolis it once was, but still proud, still echoing with the footsteps of priests and farmers. Towering above you is a temple ziggurat-shaped, made of mud brick, the color of toasted almonds. The stairs are steep and uneven, probably built that way on purpose, to keep you humble as you climb toward the gods. You pause halfway up. A goat bleats at you from below. Somewhere in the distance, someone is singing a hymn in a language that died out before most alphabets were born. You don't know what it means, but it sounds like longing and dust. And that's Mesopotamia in a nutshell, where even the bricks carry memories, and everything sacred is slightly damp. You make it to the top. Up here, the view opens wide across a checkerboard of irrigation canals. Fields of barley ripple in the heat like sleepwalking silk. Oxen plod in slow circles, churning up the mud for planting. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, are the signs of order. Mesopotamians adored order. Chaos was for demons' deserts, and maybe your uncle, after too much fermented date wine. You step inside the shrine. It's cooler here. Thick walls breathe shade into the room. There's a small altar. A statue stands above it. Its eyes made of shell and lapis. Its mouth curled into a stern half-smile. But what catches your eye first isn't the jewel eyes or the embroidered robe. It's the beard. Not a real beard, of course. This one's carved, elaborate, tiered, almost architectural in design. Each lock is curled into a tight, elegant spiral, symmetrical as a priest's prayers. It's not just decoration. It's a symbol, a statement, possibly even a divine threat. This is a god who means business. You step closer and notice something peculiar. The beard. It's attached separately, like it was added after the rest of the statue was carved. A divine accessory like a clip-on tie for the holy. It's your first clue that here in ancient Mesopotamia, beards weren't just facial hair. They were identity, authority, divinity. And yes, sometimes even a little bit of theater. Historians still argue whether these beards were originally part of every idol, or if they were reserved for certain deities like Anu, the Sky Father, or Enlil, the storm god, who probably needed a beard just to look the part when hurling divine thunder tantrums. Others think the beards were symbolic of wisdom, literally worn like badges. You walk slowly around the statue. You imagine the sculptor hands rough from carving, but eyes squinting with artistic pride, crafting each curl like it was a line of poetry. These weren't casual beards. They were ceremonial, symmetrical, often inlaid with precious metals. And if the statue belonged to a major god, well, then its beard might be gilded with gold leaf and polished daily with oils that smelled like cedar and myrrh. You sit cross-legged on the cool floor. From outside you can hear the low drumming of a festival starting. Perhaps it's Akitu, the New Year celebration, when priests carry statues like this one through the streets, letting them walk among the people. But the statue doesn't just go out for fun. No, it's an event. There are baths, perfumes, robes, and yes, beard touch-ups. You try to imagine that today a full procession just to make sure your waxed mustache is public ready. But back then it was divine protocol. The beards weren't only on gods either. You remember seeing old seal carvings, those tiny stone cylinders used like signature stamps. Many show priests and kings with stylized beards, too. The longer and curlier the beard, the more powerful the man. Or at least the more time he had to sit around getting it oiled. One fringe theory, probably not in your school textbook, suggests that the Mesopotamian beard obsession may have had roots in fertility cults. The logic goes beard equals masculinity. Masculinity equals potency. Potency equals bumper barley harvest. It's not exactly peer-reviewed, but it does explain why statues of gods often look like they're halfway to a beard competition. And speaking of fringe facts, did you know there's a term for Mesopotamian beard curls? Scholars sometimes call them triple ringlets, a style so iconic it was copied by later civilizations like the Persians and even some Greeks. You wonder how long it took to train an apprentice to curl those without snapping the clay. You lean back against a pillar. Dust falls gently from the ceiling in golden motes. Somewhere a breeze slips through the stone carrying the scent of sandalwood and the distant tang of riverfish. You let your eyes drift half shut. The god's beard gleams faintly in the gloom. You wonder what happens if the beard falls off. Turns out there's a story about that. One temple account mentions a festival where the sacred beard slipped during transport. Panic ensued. Rituals were paused. A minor priest allegedly fainted. Repairs were done at once. The statue was re-blessed. And the beard. It was reattached with bitumen paste, the Mesopotamian equivalent of superglue, only smellier. And that right there is Mesopotamia, a civilization advanced enough to invent writing beer and civil codes, but also willing to drop everything for a beard emergency. You smile faintly. You're not sure if the story is real, but it feels true. The drums outside quiet. The statue watches you silently, beard intact, curls proud. The air grows still like a page turning. You take a deep breath, and the next moment begins. You stand up slowly, bones creaking slightly, whether from the floor's chill or the sheer weight of centuries. You've just absorbed. It's hard to say. The statue's eyes seem to follow you as you step back into the sun. Behind you, the temple looms like a memory you're not quite ready to let go of. Ahead of you, a dusty lane lined with workshops, low stone homes, and the occasional chicken making suspicious eye contact. But you're not here to chase poultry. You're heading toward the real power center of Mesopotamia, not the palace, not the military quarters, but the scribal school. You pass under a cracked archway into a shaded courtyard. Clay benches line the walls. Kids barely older than 10 sit hunched over wooden boards, each smudged with damp clay. Their styluses scratch rhythmically, the sound like a quiet rain of knowledge. It's peaceful. Until one boy lets out a groan. You peek over his shoulder. He's trying to write the word for tax grain owed, but accidentally wrote goat farts. Easy mistake. The instructor, an older man with ink-stained fingers and no remaining faith in humanity, glares at the boy, but says nothing. He's saving his voice for more pressing errors, like the poor soul who just tried to spell Enlil with a cuneiform symbol that actually means flatulence. You smile to yourself and ease into a corner to watch. This is the Aduba, the tablet house. The ancient Mesopotamian version of a school/office/misery factory where scribes are trained for years to become the human hard drives of their age. You listen to the scratch, scratch, scratch of styluses. They're not writing poems. They're writing inventories, grain records, legal contracts, and temple donation receipts. Because in ancient Mesopotamia, bureaucracy was basically a national sport. And here's where it gets unexpectedly adorable. Some of the earliest love poems we've found. They're scribbled between rows of tax logs. Picture a modern accountant doodling hearts between two audit lines, and you've got the vibe. One mainstream historical fact every sleepy wanderer should know: the Mesopotamians are widely credited with inventing writing not for storytelling or epic ballads, but to keep track of food. Grain silos, cow exchanges, fish deliveries. The first chapter of human literacy. It's mostly shopping lists. Historians still argue whether writing truly originated in Sumer or developed in parallel elsewhere. But most agree Mesopotamian cuneiform is the earliest writing system we've fully decoded. You glance down at the tablets. The marks are wedge-shaped neat in their brutal simplicity. They look like tiny bird footprints pressed into a soft beach. One tablet catches your eye. It lists rations for temple staff. Dates, onions, barley beer. But next to senior priest, there's an extra line item beard oil. You raise your eyebrows. Seems even sacred accountants had grooming needs. A fringe theory floats to mind. One you read somewhere the temple scribes kept logs, not just of rations, but of ceremonial beard treatments. Oiling schedules, braiding appointments, even beard scent offerings. If true, that means there was a bureaucratic form for divine whisker care. Somewhere out there may lie the world's oldest beard management spreadsheet. You imagine applying for that job. Hello, I'd like to be the chief registrar of beard curling rotations. And here's the kicker, those scribes were the elite. Literate, trained, respected. If anyone knew where the beard glue was kept, it was them. You wander deeper into the courtyard. The instructor has set aside his tablet and begun to chant from memory. His voice is low and measured, almost hypnotic. It's a hymn to Nabu, god of writing. You let the words, ancient and echoing, slip around you like a warm tide. And suddenly you understand writing wasn't just about data. It was a bridge between worlds, the divine and the human, the temple and the tax collector, the god's beard and the man's scroll. You close your eyes briefly. In the background, someone drops a tablet with a muffled curse. It shatters. Everyone groans. One scribe whispers, "That was the copy of the barley count," and you hear a collective wince ripple through the room. You quietly back away. Outside the school, a market is bustling. Dates, fish baskets of onions piled high. You stop at a stall selling grooming supplies. No, really. There's a whole trade for combs, scented oils, animal fat balms, everything needed to tame a beard, whether yours or your god's. A merchant with a missing tooth beckons. "Special batch today," he says, holding up a small amphora. "For the temple statues." Smells like immortality. You take a cautious whiff. Smells more like goat hoof and cedar. Still, you nod politely. Here's a quirky fact: certain temples reportedly employed oilers, whose entire job was to maintain the statue's beard luster. These weren't your average interns either. They were ritual specialists trained in proper touch timing and posture. One wrong move, and you might offend the god's face, which sounds a lot like ancient HR trouble. You keep walking, and something catches your eye. A new statue, being unveiled in the plaza. A god of healing, or maybe fertility. Hard to say. But the beard is magnificent, shiny, braided into loops that hang like a lion's mane. Children gasp. Priests nod. You overhear one merchant whisper, "Best beard we've had all year." And just like that, you get it. In a world where power was divine, and divinity had a face, the beard was the banner. No one questioned it. No one joked about it. The beard wasn't fashion, it was function. Political, religious, cosmic. One scholar once argued that the Mesopotamian beard represented anchored masculinity rooted in the spiritual soil of the gods. Another suggested the beard was merely a visual placeholder for thunder. As in, look, this god could smite you. Look at his curls. The debate continues. And as you sit on a sun-warmed stone, letting the marketplace swirl around you, you start to notice how many people glance toward the statue. Not its eyes, not its posture, but the beard. It gleams in the afternoon light like a silent promise. You yawn, not from boredom, but from comfort. The kind of comfort that comes from knowing that even thousands of years ago, someone was worrying about whether a curl sat just right. You lean back. The sun begins to dip behind the ziggurat, and you let the story carry you forward. The sun has dipped low now, casting long shadows that stretch across the baked clay streets. You shuffle onward, your sandals tracing slow, sleepy circles in the dust. As you round the corner of another broad courtyard, a scent curls up into your nose, something rich, spicy, almost floral. Incense. That thick, syrupy kind that clings to your hair and memories alike. You're approaching one of the city's oldest ziggurats. This one belongs to Inanna, goddess of love war, and the kind of divine chaos that would make your grandma clutch her pearls. But tonight, the temple is calm. There's a quiet reverence humming in the air like everyone knows something important is about to happen. but no one wants to speak it aloud. You slip in through a side entrance stone steps worn smooth by centuries of anxious feet. Inside, the air is cooler, denser. Columns rise up like petrified trees. Oil lamps flicker on ledges, casting a dance of shadows across the high ceiling. You feel them more than see them, statues. And there they are, lined up like a council of stone-browed elders. Gods, demigods, ancestral kings. Some sit, others stand. Most stare straight ahead with that blank, omniscient expression only ancient statues can master. And nearly all of them have one thing in common, the beard. But not just a beard. These are beards that have been designed. Each curl, each tear, each coil meticulously planned. Some are short and tight. Others cascade down to the chest. A few are even braided like loaves of temple bread. One statue's beard looks like a staircase to enlightenment. Another resembles a bundle of snakes frozen mid-hiss. But you're not scared. There's something soothing about them, as though every curl is a mantra chanted by stone. You find yourself in front of a high altar. On it rests the largest idol in the room, possibly Enki, the god of water and wisdom. His beard is unlike the others, thick but elegant, parted in layers like a waterfall over rocks. You can almost hear it trickling, and that's when it begins. A quiet procession enters from behind a curtain. 5 temple attendants, each holding a tray. They move slowly like dancers underwater. One has a golden comb. Another carries a shallow bowl of thick oil. A third has a tiny bronze brazier, smoke curling like a question mark above it. They are here to dress the god. And you get to watch. You take a step back, careful not to breathe too loud. The head attendant nods, and the ritual begins. First, the combing slow downward strokes through the stone beard. Of course, the beard doesn't move, but that's not the point. It's symbolic. It's about care, devotion, the sacred act of tending. Next, the oil, thick as honey, and perfumed with something exotic, maybe frankincense, maybe crushed date seeds. The attendant dips a cloth into the bowl and dabs it gently along the beard's grooves. The oil sinks into the cracks like time into memory. And finally, the smoke. The brazier is placed at the statue's feet, its scent wafting upward. A purification. A divine cologne. You stifle a sneeze. This isn't just performance. This is belief carved and scented and layered in symbolism. In this moment, the beard is not an accessory. It is presence. It anchors the god to this world. One mainstream historical fact: these rituals weren't occasional. Many temples performed daily rites on their statues, feeding them, clothing them, even waking them up with hymns in the morning. The Mesopotamians didn't think the gods lived in the statues, but they treated them as divine bodies, a channel, a house, a focal point, a quirky tidbit. There were actual debates recorded on clay tablets about the proper method for washing a divine beard. One temple favored cedar oil, another swore by pomegranate sap. At least 2 fistfights supposedly broke out between beard attendants in rival cities. Divine grooming was serious business. You wonder what would happen if they messed up, if the beard was oiled with the wrong substance, or left uncombed on a festival day. Well, you don't have to wonder too long. There's a myth, half-remembered, carved faintly on a half-broken tablet, about a minor god who refused to accept his daily grooming. His beard turned brittle. Birds nested in it. Eventually, a spider spun a web across his cheek, and he was retired from worship. The statue was buried face down in the temple garden. Harsh, but effective. You sit on the cool floor, cross-legged, watching the final dabs of oil settle into the stone. The light is dim, now flickering. One of the attendants hums softly a tune older than agriculture. Historians still argue whether the gods were meant to actually inhabit these statues, or if the rituals were more symbolic, like a conversation with an answering machine that just happens to smell like cinnamon. But in this room at this moment, the debate feels beside the point. The beard gleams in the firelight. The god listens, and you feel inexplicably safe. You let your eyes wander again. One statue, near the wall, is missing part of its beard, chipped away, perhaps during some long-forgotten conflict. The rest of the statue is pristine. Only the beard is wounded. And that tells you everything you need to know about what mattered most. You reach out not to touch, just to hover your hand close. The air here vibrates faintly, or maybe it's just your own heartbeat syncing with history's. Outside, a soft wind rattles a hanging charm. Somewhere, a temple bell rings. You let your hand fall. The ritual is over. The god sleeps, or watches, or dreams, and so do you. The temple is quiet again, the scent of incense slowly fading, the oil glistening faintly on the divine beard as you step back out into the dusk. The heat of the day has softened, and the city begins to hum with evening life markets packing up carts, rattling over stone, distant laughter rising from a courtyard feast. You follow the sound, letting your feet lead you down narrow lanes lit by flickering torches wedged into cracked walls. You pass a group of children playing with clay toys, their giggles echoing off the mud brick homes. Then you spot a doorway framed by painted tiles, where two servants are carefully dressing a statue, not of a god, but of a king. Or at least a former king. The figure stands tall, immortalized in stone, his arms crossed in confidence. But once again, it's the beard that commands attention. Long, tiered, braided into exacting spirals, each one sharp enough to slice ego. Here, in this palace courtyard, you realize something crucial. Kings didn't just have beards, they inherited the very idea of the divine beard from the gods. And they didn't just stop at copying, they doubled down. You remember something a scribe muttered once: the gods taught men to rule, and men in return borrowed their beards. It starts to make sense now. The divine was the template. The king was the replica. Mainstream history backs this up. Royal reliefs from the Neo-Assyrian period, etched deep into palace walls, often show kings with impossibly ornate beards. Tier upon tier, layer upon layer. Each curl more stylized than the last. Some depictions even show a king being groomed by attendants, his beard so large, it practically needs its own chariot. One tablet from Nineveh described the royal beard as like the woven ropes of the storm god's net, which, to be honest, is both flattering and mildly threatening. A quirky fringe tidbit. There's evidence that Assyrian kings may have worn artificial extensions to enhance their already glorious beards. Beard wigs. Not for lack of facial hair, but to signal rank myth and masculinity squared. You imagine a royal wardrobe, robes, weapons, ceremonial sandals, and a rack labeled Beard Evening Formal. You stroll past another statue. This one has gemstone eyes, a helmet with wings, and of course a beard so geometric it makes you question your ability to count. A young acolyte is brushing it with a small feather tool. Every stroke is reverent. The king's beard you're beginning to see was more than a style. It was law. In fact, in the Code of Hammurabi, yes, that famous stone pillar of ancient laws, there's no direct commandment about beard length, but the entire image of the king receiving laws from Shamash, the sun god, is framed by beards. Even the gods in the carving have matching beard designs, like some celestial team-building exercise gone aesthetically right. Historians still debate why exactly kings began copying divine beards. Was it an attempt to claim divine legitimacy? To tap into sacred masculinity? Or just very clever political branding, likely a blend of all three? But one theory argues the symbolism ran even deeper. You recall a royal hymn sung during coronations. It describes the king as being woven into the heavens with curls like divine rope. The beard becomes not just decoration, but connection. A tether to the cosmic. A braid between mortal and divine. And it worked. Subjects bowed not just to the man, but to the image. The beard became shorthand for rule, just as a crown would be later in Europe. To challenge the beard was to challenge the throne. You pause at a small shrine tucked into a side alley. Inside is a miniature statue of a local ruler, not a god, not a great king, just a governor. But even he has a curled beard. Not elaborate, not gilded, just a few careful tears. Enough to suggest order, control, respect. Even the minor officials wore the image of power. You sit beside a fountain and watch a young man drawing on a clay tablet. He's sketching himself, long beard, square chin, holding a staff. You peek closer and realize he doesn't have a beard. He's maybe 16, barely has a hint of peach fuzz. But in his mind, in his dream version, he's got a full, triple-tiered, God-approved spiral cascade. The beard isn't just real, it's aspirational. And then something odd happens. A priest walks past without one. No beard. Clean-shaven face, bare jaw sharp and pale in the moonlight. You blink. The priest notices your stare and offers a dry smile. Not all are meant to carry the curl, he says, which raises a fascinating historical wrinkle. There were exceptions. In some city-states during certain rituals, or among specific religious orders, shaving was required. An act of humility, of spiritual cleanliness. Some scholars believe young priests were shaved to mark their purity, while others argue it had to do with ritual rebirth, stripping away ego before donning symbolic power again. Historians still argue whether this shaving was common or rare sacred or political. But one thing is certain, the absence of a beard had meaning just as much as its presence. You lean back, letting the fountain's burble lull you. And you realize something else in Mesopotamia, even not having a beard told a story. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of oil-baked bread, and something sharp, maybe copper. Somewhere nearby, a lullaby floats through the streets, soft as sleep. You let your eyelids grow heavy. You see a king in a throne room beard glowing with powdered gold. You see a god smiling through stone lips, beard carved with care. And you see a boy scratching his dream beard into clay. The story continues. The stars are out now, small and distant but steady. You step carefully down another narrow lane, brushing past hanging reed mats and pots of cooling stew left out on windowsills. Somewhere a dog barks once and then thinks better of it. You keep moving toward the quieter part of the temple district, guided by a strange sound, soft brushing like cloth against stone, and the occasional exasperated sigh. You round the corner and find yourself in a long, open-air chamber lit by oil lanterns. The smell hits you first warm resin, burnt cedar, beeswax, and something faintly metallic. This is the grooming hall, not for people but for statues. It's quieter than the main sanctuaries, but busy in its own way. Young priests and attendants move between rows of stone idols, each one positioned on low pedestals. You watch as one priest carefully applies a thin line of coal to a statue's stone eyelid. Another uses a soft brush to clear dust from an arched eyebrow. But what draws your eyes, and frankly your complete attention, is the beards. One attendant is holding a tray with strips of braided gold wire. Another has a jar of black pitch. A third, with the haunted look of someone who's had too much responsibility and too little thanks, is attempting to glue a beard back onto a minor fertility god whose face refuses to cooperate. This is where the magic happens. This is where gods are dressed, beards are glued, and the illusion of divine perfection is maintained with a mix of skill, ritual, and a little bit of panic. You step carefully between the rows. Some statues are old stone, flaked paint, faded beard curls worn to nubs. Others are newer, their surfaces gleaming under the lanterns. But all of them, without exception, have evidence of beard care, fresh oil. New attachments, or at the very least, a comb laid respectfully nearby. Mainstream historical fact, many Mesopotamian idols were built in modular fashion. Arms could be attached or removed. Crowns were placed during ceremonies, and the beards often added last. They were separate pieces designed to be taken off for cleaning or upgraded for major festivals. You watch as one assistant dabs warm bitumen along a jagged chin line. The beard piece, bronze and heavy, is pressed into place. It sticks with a satisfying click. The assistant breathes a sigh of relief and murmurs a short prayer. Then he spritzes the whole beard with a fine mist of cedar oil. For scent, for shine, for the gods. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your memory. One temple inventory listed 8 beard glues in its storeroom. 8. One made from tree sap. Another from fish entrails. One was reserved for summer humidity. Another for long travel processions. Somewhere out there, a Mesopotamian artisan spent his whole life developing seasonally appropriate divine beard adhesives. You imagine the scroll a comparative study on the viscosity of beard pastes in humid climates. Riveting stuff. You pass by an apprentice arguing with an older priest. But this isn't the proper braid pattern, the boy protests, holding up a golden beard attachment. The priest squints. It's fine. It's Enlil. He prefers variety. The boy grumbles. Last week he preferred symmetry. The priest shrugs. Gods are moody. And they walk off together, muttering about twist angles and ceremonial glue ratios. Historians still debate how much these rituals were believed versus performed. Were the priests true believers? or stagehands in an elaborate pageant of piety? The answer, it seems, is yes, both. In a world without cameras, mirrors, or media, the statue was the closest thing to a god's public face, and like any public figure, it needed maintenance. You don't show up to a harvest blessing with a crooked beard. That's just asking for drought. You approach a statue seated on a stone bench. This one is unusual. Instead of a sculpted beard, it has sockets, tiny indentations, where something was once attached. You peer closer. There are faint marks around the mouth and a tray nearby with broken fragments of a once spectacular beard. The attendant notices you and whispers, "This one fell last night." Ceremony interruption. Very bad luck. He sighs and begins gently brushing away the remaining adhesive with a bit of rough cloth. You sit on a low stool and watch. The brushing becomes rhythmic, almost meditative. Brush, dab, whisper, brush again. And you start to see the deeper truth. The ritual isn't just for the statue. It's for the people, for the rhythm, for the comfort that comes from tending something eternal. A small girl no more than 5 peeks in from the doorway. She sees the bearded statue and claps her hands. "Papa Beard," she says, then runs off. You smile. Even the children know. You close your eyes, listening to the quiet sounds of divine maintenance. Brush, dab, whisper. Somewhere, a clay tablet records the day's beard repairs temple of Nana. 2 jars of oil, 1 new braid, 1 beard accident, minor damage. You imagine the clerk writing it with a straight face. Maybe he chuckled. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he just wanted to get home before the goats got loose again. The night deepens. Lanterns grow dim. The last attendants finish their work, bow slightly to each statue, and slip out into the cool air. You remain behind a moment longer, soaking in the sacred silence. One statue watches you, its beard now fixed, glowing faintly with oil. It does not move. It does not speak. But you feel it anyway, that quiet weight of tradition, of care, of reverence carved in curls. And as you rise and walk back into the night, your steps slow, your breath easy. You realize something very simple. In Mesopotamia, even the gods needed grooming. You wake the next morning, if one can wake from a drifting dream like this, beneath the open sky, tucked in the shaded alcove of a quiet courtyard. Someone's left a clay cup of watered beer nearby, still cool from the night. You take a sip. It's slightly sour, a bit nutty. Not bad. Refreshing enough to get you on your feet again. The city of Uruk stretches ahead, already bustling even in the morning haze. Temple gongs sound off in the distance, slow and deep like heartbeats. But you're not going toward the main ziggurat today. No, today you're heading toward the less glamorous end of temple life, the administration offices. You follow a narrow path between mud brick walls to a large courtyard shaded by palm fronds. Beneath a series of woven canopies, you spot them: priests, junior scribes, runners, and crucially maintenance clerks, all huddled around tablets and baskets arguing softly. This is the place where divine logistics get done. A man with ink-stained fingernails ushers you toward a shaded bench. He's clutching a waxed board with stylus notes and muttering to himself. 2 days since the beard glue shipment. Unacceptable. If this keeps up, we'll have to borrow from the fertility shrine. You stifle a smile. Even gods can't avoid interdepartmental borrowing. One older priest beside him chimes in. And don't forget Enlil's beard inspection is tomorrow. If we don't oil it tonight, it'll clump again like last solstice. You blink. Beard inspection. Turns out, yes, there were formal inspections of sacred statue beards. Weekly or monthly, depending on the status of the god, the scale of the temple, and frankly, the paranoia of the high priest. Each beard had to meet standards: length, gloss, symmetry, scent. A mainstream historical detail temple complexes employed full staff hierarchies for ritual maintenance, what modern folks might call operational logistics. Among these roles were those dedicated to ornament maintenance, including beard upkeep. These workers weren't just janitors, they were caretakers of the divine image. You follow the group into a back room lined with storage jars and neatly labeled wooden crates. One is marked Beard Lower Segment, Reserve. Another simply reads Emergency Adhesives. The priest explains sometimes the beards fall off. We pretend they're molting. Another clerk chuckles, then adds with a yawn. You ever see what happens when the wrong braid gets attached to Marduk? Took us 3 weeks to undo that omen. You learn that every temple had a kispum list, a ledger, that tracked items dedicated to divine statues. Robes, necklaces, beards, even eyebrow inlays. If an item went missing, a ritual was performed not just to replace it, but to ask forgiveness. This might explain the sheep tied up outside bleeding nervously. And here comes the quirky tidbit of the day. There are actual tablets that record divine complaints. One damaged text from Sipar includes a priest's anxious report that a minor god statue frowned for 3 mornings, likely due to neglect of facial ornamentation. Historians still argue whether this was metaphor, bad lighting, or psychological projection. But the result was the same. A replacement beard was forged. The old one ceremonially burned, and 3 goats were sacrificed to reassure the divine face. You lean over a crate and see rows of polished metal beard pieces arranged like jewelry. Some are made of hammered copper, others of obsidian, inlaid with turquoise. There's even one made from dyed reeds woven tight and sealed with wax. The beards weren't just carved, they were crafted. A young apprentice enters flustered. The comb. Where's the comb for the storm god? A clerk points without looking. Middle shelf right of the eyebrow molds. You start to understand how delicate this all is. It's not vanity. It's ceremony. It's bureaucracy. It's theology done in bitumen and braid. You sit down at a low bench as one attendant carefully writes a tablet note. 1 unit of beard balm, thick grade, delivered to temple bath chamber. He doesn't look up, just mutters, can't have dry curls. Not when the gods are watching. Outside the room, someone has brought in a new shipment. Tiny amphorae sealed with rope. Each is tagged with a symbol, the crescent of Nana, the waves of Enki, the sun rays of Shamash. Even beard oil, it seems, must be sorted by celestial domain. As you exit into the courtyard again, someone rushes past, holding a box and shouting, "We're out of silver combs!" A tired voice replies from another room. "Use bronze. Just polish it till it feels like silver." You shake your head gently. The care, the labor, the sheer logistics of beard maintenance is more complex than you imagined. It's like an entire ecosystem built around follicular holiness. And here's another historical wrinkle to chew on. Some scholars believe that the intensity of beard rituals grew after major wars or disasters, almost as a kind of cultural stabilization. When the world went mad, the beards got shinier. Maybe it was a way of holding the line, of saying yes, the crops failed, and the king was eaten by lions, but by Anu, this beard is still flawless. You stroll back out under the open sky. The heat is rising again. Children are splashing water over cobblestones to keep the dust down. You pass a temple courtyard, where a statue of a lion-headed god stands mid-roar, beard neatly trimmed into a fierce triangular pattern. 2 clerks are standing beside him. "You think we should angle the bottom curl more left?" one asks. The other pauses, tilts his head. He does look slightly judgy today. You keep walking, and you think maybe the gods didn't need perfect beards. But the people did. It gave shape to belief, form to the formless, order to chaos. And if nothing else, it made them feel seen. You stop at a quiet fountain, splash water on your face, and lean against the wall. Somewhere behind you, someone shouts, "Who moved the ceremonial tweezers?" You smile, and you drift forward. The sun climbs higher as you continue your walk, the city now pulsing with activity. Ox carts rumbling through dusty streets, vendors yelling over each other, and temple runners darting between doorways with bundles of scrolls and pots of oil. The smell of roasted onions and fish fat lingers in the air, mingling oddly with the ever-present tang of old clay and dried bitumen. You're heading now toward the palace district. Not just for the glamour, though. Yes, the limestone walls and carved columns are impressive, but to see where the divine beard became a royal obsession. You pass beneath an arched gate, guarded by lion statues, stoic silent, and just the tiniest bit smug. The inner courtyard is shaded by grapevine trellises and lined with stone benches, most of which are currently occupied by officials waiting for their moment to speak to the king. And there he is, or rather his image. A massive relief carved into the wall shows the monarch standing in profile, flanked by symbols of power, bow rod mountain, and, you guessed it, beard. Not a casual mortal beard. No stubble, no patchiness. This is architecture grown on a face layered, fluted, tiered like the fronds of a stylized palm tree dipped in bronze. You step closer and trace the grooves with your eyes. Each curl is exact. It's a beard that says, "I command the sun to rise," and then has the paperwork to prove it. Mainstream historical fact, Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian kings commissioned enormous palace reliefs. that emphasized military might and divine favor, and beards were central to this visual rhetoric. The more intricate the beard, the more stability it implied. Order on the chin equals order in the kingdom. You round the edge of the courtyard and spot a man standing beside a large clay board. He's the palace herald. Not a scribe exactly, but someone who announces documents and today rehearses. He calls out in a sing-song voice, "The king's beard shall glimmer like the lion's eye at dawn." Another clerk nearby groans. "You used that line yesterday?" The herald shrugs. It's a good line. Turns out they're rehearsing the opening of the royal ceremony. Today, the king is expected to appear before the gods for the seasonal ritual of divine consultation, a kind of spiritual performance review. And his beard. It has been curled since before sunrise. You're invited to observe the preparations. You're led into a private chamber just behind the throne hall. The king is not there yet, but his attendants are. 2 are arranging a golden beard extension. Yes, another beard wig on a velvet-lined stand. Another is heating up a small dish of fragrant wax for last-minute shine. A final attendant walks in with a puff of flour on his face and mutters, "The sacred beard comb was in the bread oven again." A scribe nods solemnly. It happens. You watch as they gently lift the golden piece and begin applying it to a waiting mannequin. This isn't practice, it's a test. The king's real beard will be enhanced by this attachment, and it must sit just right. Too high, and he looks smug. Too low, and he looks sleepy. It's a delicate art. And here comes the quirky bit. At least one ancient court document suggests a special punishment for barbers who botched royal grooming. The phrase used is 7 lashes, and the loss of combing rights. No one's sure what exactly losing combing rights entailed, but it probably meant being reassigned to livestock. Historians still argue whether kings actually wore these beard attachments in daily life or only during rituals. Some believe they were reserved for festivals and public appearances. Others suggest they were purely symbolic, presented in effigy rather than worn on the face. But one thing is agreed upon: the beard had to be flawless. You're escorted to a side balcony overlooking the throne room. The ceremony is beginning. Trumpets sound short, sharp blasts. The crowd stills. The king enters. And there it is, his beard glimmering in the torchlight cascades like a frozen waterfall of bronze. It's braided down the sides, flared at the bottom, shaped like an inverted flame. You can't help but stare. The priest begins chanting. The king lifts his hands. A bowl of incense is brought forward. The gods are invoked. The air thickens with meaning, and you, perched quietly at the edge of it all, realize the full theatrical weight of this moment. This isn't just ceremony. It's branding. Every thread of braid is a message: I am chosen. I am blessed. I am orderly. The beard is the bridge between heaven and throne. The crowd bows. Not to the crown, not even to the man, but to the image. You notice a small boy at the edge of the crowd tug on his father's sleeve and whisper, "Will I have a beard like that?" The father chuckles softly. "If you serve the gods well, maybe." You lean against the cool stone of the balcony. The firelight dances. The king speaks something you can't quite hear, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that his face is framed in curls. And every curl tells the same story, I rule, because the gods approve. You wonder how long it took to perfect the shape. How many attendants burned their fingers. How many test braids were discarded before landing on this exact angle of glory. And you realize, in Mesopotamia, a beard wasn't a beard. It was a covenant. The ceremony ends in a blur of chants, trumpets, and incense smoke that seems to cling to your hair, your thoughts, and even the insides of your lungs. You slip quietly out a side gate, avoiding the crowd, your ears still echoing with the phrase, "May his beard grow longer than the rivers of Dilmun." Poetic, slightly excessive, entirely Mesopotamian. The streets are quieter now. Afternoon heat has sent most people inside. Even the goats look sleepy, their hooves clicking lazily against the sun-baked stones. You duck into a narrow alleyway lined with shuttered shops and colorful fabrics strung like canopies overhead. You're not heading back to the temples or palaces. No, this time you're going somewhere unexpected, the women's quarter. You pass under a low arch and step into a courtyard full of laughter. Young girls are weaving textiles in the shade. One older woman is sharpening a bronze needle with the confidence of someone who's sewn both dresses and curses into her work. Another is grinding red ochre into a fine powder for face paint. And there, seated at a polished bronze mirror, is a noblewoman with a servant behind her, carefully pinning up a wig. A bearded wig. You blink. She glances up at you, amused. Oh, didn't think women could wear them too. You shake your head, not in disapproval, just in curiosity. She chuckles. Well, it's not for daily wear. Only during the Inanna rites. But still, power has its styles. She waves a hand, gesturing for you to sit. You do, carefully trying not to disturb the array of combs brushes and tiny flasks of scented oil on the low table. Mainstream history tends to forget this corner of the story, but there's evidence buried in the dust and echoed in hymn fragments that elite women priestesses and ritual performers also wore symbolic beards during certain festivals. Not out of mockery, not out of pretense, but out of spiritual solidarity. You watch as the servant adds finishing touches to the beard-braided threads of black wool dusted with shimmer powder. It hangs just below her chin, delicate and purposeful. She looks regal and a little dangerous. The noblewoman explains, during the spring offering, we take on aspects of Inanna's duality, beauty, and battle softness and severity. The beard is part of the transformation. She leans forward slightly, and you catch the scent of rose oil and sandalwood. Her eyes are rimmed in kohl, her cheeks dusted with crushed pearl. And now a beard tiered and curled like any king's completes the look. A fringe detail floats to mind. One rare cylinder seal from the city of Eisen shows a high priestess standing in front of a temple fire, wearing what appears to be a stylized beard. Some scholars argue it was symbolic. Others think it was literal. One very passionate academic once presented a 90-minute lecture titled The Sacred Whiskers of Inanna Gender Performance in Early Cultic Dress. Historians still debate whether these feminine beards were actual accessories, painted illusions, or spiritual metaphors. But here in this courtyard, it's all very real. No metaphor in sight. Just a woman adjusting her chin curls and smirking at your awe. You think the gods care what face they speak through? She asks quietly. They listen to the voice, not the jawline. You nod, absorbing this. One of the young girls watching nearby pipes up, Can I wear one someday? The noblewoman smiles. If you study your hymns and comb your soul, yes. The girl beams. The servant wraps the wig in linen and places it carefully into a lacquered box. Another woman enters with a necklace of hammered gold, shaped like sunbursts and fish scales. The full transformation for the evening rite has begun. You're invited to watch. A few hours later, you find yourself in a dimly lit chamber strung with silks and flower garlands. Candles flicker in wall niches. At the far end, a low altar sits before a painted mural of Inanna, goddess of opposites, of contradictions, of extremes, and in the center of the room stands the noblewoman. Robed, jeweled, bearded, she begins to chant low, rhythmic verses in a tongue older than conquest. Other women join in, forming a circle, their steps measured soft, hypnotic. It's not a performance. It's a communion. You sit on a woven mat, mesmerized. The beard no longer seems strange. It seems essential. A bridge between the binary. A gesture toward the divine that transcends gender, class, or biology. A signal flare to the heavens that says, I am part of this story too. You feel a shiver of understanding pass through you. Not knowledge, not fact, but something deeper. Respect. The ritual ends with silence, a final candle blown out with a prayer too quiet to hear. The room fades into shadow save for the mural's eyes, which seem to shimmer faintly in the dying light. You step outside into the night air. It's cooler now. Stars begin to show again as if peeling away from the sky one by one. Behind you, a young girl hums the chant she just learned, swaying slightly with the tune. Ahead, the city breathes. And you think, in a land where gods wore beards, so too did women, because reverence like hair grows in many forms. The moon hangs low, now pale as polished bone, casting soft shadows over the baked rooftops of Uruk. You wander the quiet streets past sleeping vendors and shuttered shrines, past a pair of temple guards dozing upright with spears cradled like baby goats. Somewhere, a dog lets out a bark that echoes far too dramatically for such a tiny creature, and then you hear it. A clang, a rhythmic ch-ch, and under that, the unmistakable hum of men trying very hard to outdo one another in silence. You're near the artisan quarter where metalworkers, stone carvers, and royal sculptors keep late hours. You follow the sound until you reach a low, windowless workshop glowing from within like a kiln about to whisper a secret. Inside, it's warm, loud, and utterly serious. 5 men, broad-shouldered, bronzed, and brow-furrowed, are standing around what can only be described as a shrine to facial hair. On a stone table rests a carved beard-in-progress mid-braid. Nearby, another completed piece glints with inlaid silver, the curls so tight and symmetrical, you'd think geometry had grown feelings. This isn't just grooming. This is warfare. You've stumbled into what palace rumors call the Beard House, a specialized artisan collective dedicated solely to crafting, maintaining, and innovating the beards of kings' gods and very rich statues. One man points at a beard piece and declares, "You curled it leftward." Enlil's always go right. The accused snorts. "That's for Marduk. Enlil's curls are directional depending on lunar phase." Another adds dryly, "Well, the moon's full tonight, so someone's getting smited." You step in quietly, unnoticed at first. Tools hang from every wall. Delicate bronze picks, reed combs, resin spatulas. There are samples pinned up like fashion sketches. A catalog of curls, triple spiral, palm frond, storm loop, inverted flame. It's part barbershop, part armory, part theological think tank. Mainstream historical fact, Assyrian art reached an aesthetic peak with its relief sculptures, particularly under kings like Ashurnasirpal II and Sargon II. These carvings famously depicted kings with long, square-cut beards that defied physics and humidity alike. The detail was intentional. It conveyed absolute control over nature enemies and stray whiskers. One artisan pulls out a clay model of a new design. I call it the eagle's tail. Good for spring festivals. Subtle. Majestic, slightly terrifying. You try not to laugh. Turns out innovation was encouraged within bounds. Each god, each ruler had established curl patterns. Deviations could be interpreted as divine insult, or worse, bad taste. And yes, here's your quirky tidbit: one partially preserved letter from a Babylonian palace archive refers angrily to the curly-bearded fraud of a statue allegedly delivered with the wrong beard design, causing embarrassment during a royal procession. The artisan was fined and assigned to horses, which, if you've ever combed a sweaty war mule, was probably worse than jail. You watch as a new apprentice attempts a curl on a practice slab. It snaps. The workshop falls silent. The master sculptor walks over, gently takes the tool, and redoes it with a flourish. One perfect ringlet blooms under his hands. The room breathes again. Historians still argue how much training went into beard crafting. Some say it was a family trade passed from father to son. Others believe guild-like structures existed complete with apprenticeships, secret formulas for beard oil mixes, and oaths sworn before the statues themselves. In one corner, a man is brushing melted bitumen into a mold. He leans close and murmurs, "They don't just wear these. They believe through them. That curl there, that's where we trap the prayers." You're not sure if he's serious or just very, very tired. Either way, you nod. You sit down near a wall lined with discarded beard fragments. Some are cracked. Others look half-melted victims of storage fires, bad weather, or palace renovations gone wrong. And here's a secret: some beard pieces were repaired, repolished, resacralized. But others, especially broken ones, were quietly buried. You've read about these beard tombs, small pits in temple gardens, where old beard pieces were interred with incense and blessings. The theory: if the gods grew angry when neglected, they'd grow furious if their broken chin pieces were tossed out like kitchen scraps. You ask if this shop has a beard tomb. The master nods. "Out back. We bury every 7th failure." A pause. "Unless it's symmetrical. Then we keep it." The night deepens. The apprentices yawn. The resin hardens. The curls set. One final beard piece is lifted from its mold, golden flawless, the size of a forearm. It's destined for a new statue of Asher, god of kingship and war. The artisan holds it up. For a moment you all stare, and then almost reverently someone says, "That's the one." You leave as the lamps dim. Outside, the breeze is cool and sharp, the stars scattered like dropped beads across the sky. And as you walk, you picture them beard artisans of Uruk, Babylon, Nineveh, curling stone, polishing history, threading worship into hair. Not warriors, not prophets, but the hands behind the image. And somehow, in this moment, they feel like the most important people in the world. The workshop fades behind you, its warm lanterns now distant specks in the night. You follow a narrow path toward the edge of the temple quarter, where the city begins to thin out, where gardens creep in between buildings, and the clamor of human ambition gives way to frog song and the rustle of reeds. You don't know where your feet are taking you, until you arrive at a courtyard that smells like wet clay beeswax and the faint bitterness of temple incense. You've reached the barbers. Not the ones who cut hair for the palace elite. No, these are the temple barbers, their razors sharp enough to shave stone, and their calendars booked solid through the next solstice. A low roof of thatch shades their open workspace. Stone benches are neatly arranged around a central platform, where an elderly man sits, legs crossed, beard already halfway trimmed into the tight triple curl of a priestly assistant. Another barber moves methodically along the curve of his jaw, murmuring small blessings under his breath. You take a seat at the edge, and no one stops you. You're not the first curious soul to wander here in the moonlight, drawn by the strange serenity of holy grooming. One of the barbers, young tall, with a mouth that seems built for muttering ancient chants, glances at you. First time watching a beard consecration? You nod. He smiles. It's not just trimming, it's invocation. He returns to his work. Mainstream historical fact, temple barbers were not ordinary tradesmen. They were semi-sacred figures with roles in both cosmetic and spiritual maintenance. Grooming wasn't just hygiene, it was ritual. Every hair removed or left behind held meaning. Every cut a line in the script of the soul. Nearby, a table glints with tools, obsidian razors, bronze, shears, bone, combs soaked in oil. There's a small jar of golden salve, labeled only with a symbol, a stylized curl. Beard balm for statues. Possibly. Or maybe for senior priests on festival days. A chant begins soft, slow, spoken in unison. 3 barbers join in as they attend to a stone bust resting nearby. You recognize the figure, a minor healing god. His beard had cracked down the center. Now it's being reattached, the 2 halves bonded with a thick paste that smells like pine tar and honey. A quirky, historical tidbit in one city temple barbers were legally forbidden from working during lunar eclipses. It was believed that trimming the wrong hair at the wrong time might offend the divine image. A beard out of alignment under a shadowed moon, that could mean famine. Or worse, bad omens during grain weighing season. Historians still argue whether this was widespread or a localized superstition, but the tablets don't lie. One fragment from Sipar reads, "On the night of the blood moon, no blade shall meet chin, lest the river turn backward." You raise your eyebrows at that one. One of the barbers chuckles. Superstitious nonsense, he mutters. But you notice he's avoiding the obsidian razor tonight just in case. As the old man's beard is completed, another figure enters the courtyard. This one's a priest of high-rank robes, edged in silver thread, a scroll tucked under his arm. His beard is immaculate already, but he sits down anyway, nodding toward the senior barber. "Curl maintenance," he says simply. "Ceremony in 3 days." The barbers nod in unison. The ritual begins again, combing, oiling, shaping. You watch as the curls are separated with thread, then coaxed into their form with a light clay paste. It smells of saffron and citrus peel. You begin to realize in this culture, a beard wasn't just a face's accessory. It was a timeline. Young men had short, simple beards. Apprentices were allowed only partial curls. Full priests wore the triple-tiered design. And the elders, the ones with white in their hair and dreams in their bones, they were allowed to shape their beards however they pleased. That was the final privilege, creative liberty. You look around the courtyard and see examples of each stage. A boy with a tentative first curl. A man with the priestly trident of locks. An elder with wild, sweeping spirals that brush his collarbones like seaweed in the tide. They don't look at one another, but they are mirrors. The ceremony winds down. The elder thanks the barbers with a bow. The priest nods and departs in a hush of silk. One apprentice turns toward you holding a comb with a spiral tip. "Would you like a curl?" he asks, only half joking. You smile, decline. Some things are better observed than worn. You rise, stretch, and walk slowly into the garden beyond the courtyard. Moonlight filters through fig leaves. A small pool reflects the sky. And here's something almost too perfect on a low pedestal near the pool, is a statue, unknown deity worn by time, its features softened by weather. But the beard, still intact, Still curled, still beautiful. You sit beside it, inhale the stillness, and whisper a thank you to the barbers, to the curlers, to every pair of hands that believed stone could be sacred. Dawn stretches slowly across the rooftops as you rise from your place beside the bearded statue, its stone curls now catching the first glimmers of sun like molten rope. The air is cool, thick with dew, and the scent of crushed leaves underfoot. Birds begin their hesitant chorus, first one, then a second, then an entire treeful, erupting into song as though the city has just been invented. You wander back into the waking streets where market stalls are being unfolded and shutters creak open. It's a new day in Uruk, and even the statues seem to blink a little slower than usual. Your feet lead you toward the smaller temples, less famous, less gilded, but no less sacred. These are neighborhood shrines, often cared for by just a few families. You step into one such temple, barely more than a single chamber. Its walls faded with time, its offerings modest, a bowl of lentils, a single date, a curl of incense still trailing smoke. But the statue here is magnificent. Not large, not golden, just perfect. It's a figure seated cross-legged, hands folded, face serene. And the beard, the beard, is where the magic is. Not long, not flashy, but every curve is gentle, balanced, deliberate. A smaller god, a quieter cult, but the craftsmanship divine. You crouch to inspect it and notice something fascinating. There's a name etched faintly under the base, made by Elet Nasir, son of a potter. This wasn't the work of a royal artisan. This was someone local, a common craftsman, a man who probably shaped clay jugs in the morning and carved this god at night by oil lamp. And yet he gave it a beard worthy of kings. Mainstream historical fact. Local statues were often made by regional artisans, not the grand workshops of the capital. These creators weren't always famous, but their work survives in temples, buried hoards, and riverbanks. Even now, beards intact, curling still after 4,000 years. You step outside again and spot a boy carrying what looks like a broken stone fragment. You follow him through the alleyways to a courtyard where a small group is gathered around a cloth-covered platform. A community effort. A beard has broken off a minor idol during yesterday's procession, and now the neighborhood is fixing it. No fanfare, no priests, just quiet hands and shared reverence. The boy lays down the piece. A woman with streaks of white in her braids gently lifts the statue's head. Another man applies a dab of paste pine resin soot and some kind of powdered shell mixed with spit and murmured prayers. They press the beard into place, hold it, wait, and when they let go, the curl holds. A breath escapes from the group as one. It's not just a repair, it's a restoration of dignity. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your memory, in one village record scratched on a pottery shard. The community pooled money for a new beard for their storm god, after his statue fell in a thunderstorm. The scribe who recorded it added a small sketch of the improved curls, and noted with local pride, now sharper than Marduk's. Historians still debate how widespread these communal repairs were. Were they sanctioned by the temple's secret neighborhood rituals? The beginnings of folk religion. But the evidence remains not all sacred grooming came from palaces. Some of it came from courtyards, kitchens, back rooms, and love. You sit on the edge of the courtyard as the group lights a small incense bundle. Someone pours a little beer into a dish. The statue gleams again, not because it's grand, but because it's cared for. And that's the difference. In the great halls of kings, beards meant power. Here they mean belonging. You step away quietly, leaving them to their work. Along the alley wall, someone has etched a small graffiti figure stick limbs, a triangle body, and a curled beard bigger than the head. Below it, the words, Elil watches. You smile. You reach the riverbank just as a barge glides by its driver, humming a slow tune about barley and stars. Across the water, the skyline of Uruk wavers in the morning heat. Ziggurats towers, temple spires, and everywhere statues, stone faces, stone curls, stone memories. You close your eyes a moment and imagine one of those statues being unveiled for the first time. The beard shining with fresh oil, the crowd murmuring approval, a child reaching up to touch the curls, a priest nodding gravely, and somewhere unseen a potter's son smiling quietly. because for a moment his hands touched the divine. The day grows long again as the heat returns, the sun creeping over the horizon with the slow authority of an old king surveying his domain. You find yourself back in the older quarter of the city walls, patched with mismatched bricks, doorways, warped by time and weather. This is the part of Uruk that isn't in the travel scrolls, but it breathes just as deeply. You duck beneath a crumbling arch and step into a shaded square where something unusual is happening. A small group of priests, elders, and artisans are gathered around a stone pedestal. Atop it rests a statue with a conspicuously blank chin, no beard, not broken, just missing, and by the looks on their faces, this is a problem. You move closer and listen. The whispers pass from one person to another, like bees from flower to flower. Why hasn't it grown in yet? It's the 3rd month. The moon's waxed and waned twice. We did the anointing. We oiled the face. Still nothing. You blink and it hits you. This is a new god. Or at least a new representation. The statue has just been finished, installed, and venerated, but the beard hasn't been added. And that's not just an aesthetic issue. It's a theological one. Mainstream historical truth in Mesopotamian religion, installing a divine statue, was a multi-day ritual. It wasn't just about sculpting and painting. It involved opening the mouth, an elaborate ceremony that invited the god's presence into the figure. Only after this could the statue be placed in a shrine, fed, bathed, and, yes, bearded. A statue without a beard, especially one representing a male deity, was like a sealed letter form without message. It wasn't complete. You watch as a scribe pulls out a tablet and reads aloud. The beard shall be fixed upon the 7th day, following oiling and the first offering of grain. A carpenter mumbles, "It's the 7th day today." A younger priest adds, "But the offering spilled." A silence falls. And you suddenly understand something has gone wrong with the ritual. A missed step. A bad omen. A moment of spilled barley, or a cracked bowl, and now the beard cannot be attached. The god in their eyes is not ready. You sit on a low wall nearby and think about the weight of it. Here a beard isn't just decoration, it's activation. Until the curls are fixed into place, this statue is liminal between divine and inert, sacred and stone. A fringe theory you once heard bubbles up. Some Mesopotamian theologians believed that the beard served as the channel through which divine breath entered the world, that its curls caught the voice of the god like a net of sound. It sounds fantastical, but in a world where writing was sacred and speech was ritual, it makes a kind of poetic sense. Historians still argue whether beards were the last element added in the installation ceremony, or one of the earliest, but they agree on this. Once attached, the beard couldn't just be removed casually. It had to be retired. You glance over at the stone face. It stares forward patiently, its expression gentle, almost embarrassed by the attention. You hear one elder whisper, "Maybe it's shy," and another murmurs back, "Maybe it wants something." That's when someone suggests a divination. A bowl of oil is brought. A feather is dipped and held just above the statue's chin. The priest tilts the feather slightly, lets the drop fall. Everyone leans in. It lands and slides down the smooth chin. No curl forms, no line catches it. The group exhales, not ready yet. They try again, this time with oil mixed with myrrh. A drop. A pause. And then it trails along a faint groove. Just a shadow of one. Barely visible. But it follows the curve. The youngest apprentice gasps. It wants a beard. The crowd murmurs approval. An elder nods. Prepare the glue. And just like that, the ritual begins. The beard, already carved in advance, kept in a velvet pouch, is carefully lifted. It's modest. Just 3 curls, nothing fancy. But polished. Cared for. The paste is warmed. The prayers begin. You watch silent as the assistant priest presses the beard into place, holding it for a full minute with both hands, while the others chant softly in a dialect you barely recognize. When he lets go, the beard sticks. The statue seems to change just slightly. Not literally. Not physically. But it feels fuller. Present. The square is quiet for a moment. Then the scribe claps his tablet shut. It is done. You find your breath again. You hadn't realized you were holding it. And here's a small fact barely recorded. Some temples threw quiet celebrations not for the birth of a statue, but for the bearding. Cakes were baked. Songs were sung. One record from Lagish describes a festival of the first curl, in which children tied ribbons to their own chins in imitation. You like that? The assistant priest places a single flower at the statue's feet. Not protocol, just instinct. A curl catches the breeze. And you think, in this place at this time to add a beard is to invite the universe in. Not because the beard itself is powerful, but because we believe it is. The square slowly empties, the murmurs fading into the low thrum of the waking city. You remain seated by the wall a while longer, watching the newly bearded statue, now catching full morning light. The curls gleam faintly, like a satisfied exhale from stone. Eventually, your feet take you wandering again. Past bread sellers, past musicians tuning flutes, past temple runners muttering schedules under their breath. The rhythm of Mesopotamia is measured in footsteps, in shadows, in curls carved into stone. You follow the edge of the city toward the southern quarter where brick dust hangs thick in the air. And that's when you hear it music. Drums, pipes, and a chorus of voices that rise and fall like barley in the wind. You've arrived at the edge of a festival. A crowd is gathering near a wide plaza filled with banners of faded green and gold. A raised platform stands at the center, draped in embroidered cloth and scattered with flower petals. On it, a statue of Marduk, god of wisdom, storms, and statecraft. And below the statue, a line of men, all bearded, all competitors. You've stumbled upon one of the most peculiar and charming civic traditions of the later Babylonian period, the beard off. Mainstream historical truth. There are scattered inscriptions, sometimes humorous, sometimes suspiciously official, that suggest seasonal competitions were held in honor of gods known for their spectacular beards. Marduk, Asher, Enlil. Even Nergal, though his beard was said to be fiery and uncombed. These events blended ritual devotion with community bonding and the occasional accidental fistfight. Today's competition flawless. You take a spot near the front as the town crier steps forward, scroll in hand, and declares, "Let the curls be judged, the oils be sniffed, the lengths be envied. May Marduk find among these men the beard most worthy of divine envy." The crowd cheers. One by one, the contestants approach the platform. Each bows to the statue, then turns slowly to display their craftsmanship. The judging panel consists of 3 temple barbers, 1 poet, and for reasons no one questions, a baker. You watch as each man presents his beard like a sacred scroll. There's the classic triple curl, the ash spiral. One man even boasts a miniature ziggurat shape, complete with 4 visible tears in his facial hair. The crowd goes wild. A young man nervously approaches. His beard is modest short, but meticulously combed. He bows low, then says, "This beard has not yet seen a full year, but it has listened to hymns daily." A murmur of appreciation. The poet nods solemnly. Quirky fringe fact in one surviving fragment from Sipar, a priest judge praised a contestant by saying, "Though the beard is young, it carries the rhythm of old prayers." Beard judgment, it seems, was never purely visual. It was spiritual, symbolic, full of context. As the contest proceeds, you glance over at the statue of Marduk. His beard, carved long ago, is perfect. Tiered like a storm cloud, braided like fate. There's no doubt who invented the aesthetic standard here. The mortal contestants are merely striving to echo a divine original. And that's the point, isn't it? To approach the gods through imitation. To climb curl by curl into alignment. One contestant's beard is adorned with tiny bits of lapis lazuli. Another has scented his with cedar oil and myrrh. A third has trained his into interlocking loops, more art than hair, frankly. The poet murmurs he braided a riddle. The baker shrugs, still looks itchy. You try not to laugh too loudly. As the final contestant bows and retreats, the crowd hushes. The judges whisper, deliberate, stroke their own chins thoughtfully. Then a decision. The young man, the one with the humble, hymn-listening beard, is called forward. He kneels. A garland of barley is placed around his shoulders. A jug of date wine is handed over. The crowd erupts. Someone in the back shouts, "May his beard grow long and never split." It's a celebration not of vanity, but of reverence, of grooming as ritual, of face as symbol. And just as the festivities begin to dissolve into dancing, you notice something peculiar. An old man, beardless, steps quietly to the statue. He kneels, places a finger gently on one carved curl, and whispers something only the stone can hear. Then he turns and walks away. No one sees him but you, and you think. Sometimes the best beards don't live on faces. They live in memories. You leave the square as the sun begins to tilt westward, casting long shadows behind each tiered chin, each laughing mouth, each glinting curl. You turn back once more to see the god smiling silently, beard aglow. The festival fades behind you like a pleasant dream, its music trailing off into the warm breeze. You walk slowly now, full from both the laughter of the crowd and the quiet weight of everything you've witnessed. Each step brings you deeper into the older parts of the city, where the bricks lean inward just slightly, as if eavesdropping on history. You're making your way toward one of the most storied temples in Uruk, the House of Judgment. Not a place for sentencing or shackles, but a quiet sanctuary where disputes are settled, contracts are blessed, and oaths are sworn under the unblinking eyes of divine figures. Here decisions are not shouted, they are whispered. And the beard is more than an ornament, it is a seal. You pass through a shaded colonnade, each column etched with faded prayers, and enter a chamber cool and still. The air smells of cedar smoke and old parchment. In the center of the room stands a single figure, stone majestic, its eyes inset with shell, its posture calm. But its beard is different. It is long, yes. Styled, yes. But unlike the usual rigid curls, this one flows in gentle waves, each strand almost imperceptibly distinct. It's a beard that doesn't shout power, it murmurs fairness, thoughtfulness, balance. This is the god of justice, and his beard is a text. A priest, quiet and deliberate, approaches the altar and lights a single wick of oil. The flame flickers, then steadies. He turns to you and says simply, "Watch and listen." The beard speaks. You take a seat on the cool stone bench along the wall. Another priest enters with two petitioners. One older woman, one young man. Their words are low, respectful. A boundary dispute. Something about palm trees and irrigation lines. The priest listens. Then he turns slowly, reverently, and looks to the statue. Not for answers exactly, but for framing, for clarity, for precedent. Mainstream historical fact. Mesopotamian legal practice often took place in temple spaces. Justice was not entirely secular. Oaths sworn in front of a divine figure were considered binding not just by law, but by fear of cosmic retribution. And gods of law and order like Shamash were often depicted with long, flowing beards. Statues of these gods were placed in courtyards, market gates, or judgment halls, not simply as decoration, but as silent jurists. The priest turns back to the pair and speaks his decision, careful, clear, patient. Neither petitioner rejoices, neither protests. They both bow to the statue, and then quietly, reverently, they touch the edge of the beard. Just once. A brush of fingers against stone, not out of ritual, out of agreement. Here's your quirky tidbit. Certain law codes, like the Code of Hammurabi, were literally engraved under images of the god giving the law through his beard. On the stele itself, Shamash hands Hammurabi a rod and ring symbols of justice, while his beard flows in exacting tears down his chest. One scholar called it a visual contract written in curls. Historians still argue whether these images were meant to be read literally or metaphorically. Was the beard simply a sign of wisdom? Or was it thought to carry the law itself, line by line, loop by loop? But the people here don't debate it. They live it. You remain in the chamber after the others leave. The fire still flickers. The beard still gleams faintly, as if absorbing light and meaning alike. You step forward and crouch before the statue. No incense, no hymn, just stillness. And in that moment, you understand, the beard is not decoration. It is archive. Each curl a clause, each strand a precedent, each twist a warning or a mercy. You reach out not to touch, but to hover. And for the briefest breath of time, you feel something ancient settle near your chest. Like gravity, like honesty, like the weight of a contract signed with one's soul. You stand. Outside, the air has shifted. A breeze picks up. The sun has begun to drift toward the city's far wall. Children are playing in a narrow street nearby, one pretending to be a king, his towel tied like a cape, his chin pushed forward in mock grandeur. "Look at me," he shouts. "I have a beard of judgment." His friends groan. "You said that yesterday," but you smile, because even they know. The beard is law, and the law sometimes comes with curls. The sun is lower now, stretching the city into long shadows, making rooftops glow and alleyways darken. You leave the house of judgment behind, its curls of law still lingering somewhere in your mind like a seal pressed gently into warm clay. You wander east toward the merchant quarter, where the scents grow stronger. Dates, salted fish, garlic perfume. The streets here buzz with energy, 1,000 bartered promises carried on sandal scuffs and laughter. And then something shifts. You spot a group of men paused mid-step, staring at someone walking toward them, a stranger. Tall, confident, clean-shaven, utterly. You slow your own steps and watch the space widen around him. He's dressed finely, trader silks, foreign embroidery, gold rings. But the absence on his face is louder than any jewelry. No beard, not even a shadow. And in this city, in this culture, it's jarring. The murmurs ripple like wind in a wheat field. Phoenician, maybe from the west. Is he ill? You follow the man's path discreetly as he moves from stall to stall, inspecting goods, negotiating with a low, even tone. He's polite, sharp-eyed, generous with coin. But still people stare. Mainstream historical fact in Mesopotamian culture, especially from the mid-2nd millennium BCE onward. The beard was more than fashion. It was trust, identity, respectability. Foreigners who arrived clean-shaven often confused or unnerved locals. In some cases, they were associated with low-status servitude, or even deceit, based not on malice, but misunderstanding. One merchant offers the man dried figs but doesn't meet his eyes. Another pauses just a moment too long before giving change. Eventually, the stranger turns to go shoulders-squared face, unbothered. But you catch it just for a second, his hand brushing his chin. A flicker of uncertainty. A reflex without purpose. He feels it too. You follow him down a side street where the traffic thins. There, beneath a faded archway, stands a low building, with a familiar sign carved above the door, a stylized beard. A grooming hall. He hesitates, then enters. Curious, you step closer and peer in through the open doorway. Inside, the barbers greet him with reserved nods. He says something you don't catch. They reply gentle, but firm. He shakes his head, then surprisingly laughs, and they laugh with him. He doesn't ask for a beard. He asks to borrow one. A barber disappears into a back room and returns with something wrapped in red linen. A ceremonial beard wig, likely one kept for rituals, plays, or unusual guests. The stranger examines it, runs his fingers across the woven threads, then carefully places it against his face. It's comically large. Too curly, too black. But something about it works. Everyone chuckles, even him. And just like that, the tension breaks. He leaves the shop with the beard still in place, striding through the market again. This time, the merchants greet him. A fig seller offers an extra handful free of charge. A child points and shouts, "That one looks like the fish god." He grins and nods, because now he belongs at least a little more. A quirky tidbit from the archive's one city record from Ur lists a provision for beard cloths lent to foreign dignitaries during temple visits. They were perfumed curled and designed to be worn like a scarf across the chin. A polite compromise. Scholars debate whether this was satire or sincere hospitality. Historians still argue about what the beard truly signified. Was it about masculinity, religion, citizenship, status, or all of the above? But what you've just witnessed is something else, a moment of grace, an understanding that symbols matter, and that sometimes we can borrow our way into a culture if we're willing to wear it lightly and with a smile. You sit by a fountain as dusk wraps the city in indigo. The water burbles. The last sun glints off a dozen chins. Real beards, fake beards, child-drawn beards, made of soot and daydreams. And the foreigner, he disappears into the crowd, beard intact, for now. And you think, maybe the beard isn't just what you grow. Maybe it's what you're given. The stars are beginning to appear now, scattered like barley seeds tossed onto a velvet cloth. You rise from your spot at the fountain and walk slowly through the darkening streets. Lamps flicker to life behind shutters. The scent of baked clay smoke and warm cumin drifts gently over the rooftops. And then unexpectedly you're drawn to a place you hadn't planned to visit, a tomb. Not a grand one, not royal. Just a small walled garden behind a modest temple. Quiet, overgrown in places. The gate is unlatched. You push it gently, It creaks. Inside, moonlight dances on flat stones etched with faint lines, names mostly faded titles, worn smooth by weather and time. You wander between them with soft steps, brushing your fingers along the top of one that still bears a small symbol, a spiral, a curl, a beard. You pause. You've found what scholars now call a beard grave. Mainstream historical fact, while rare, there is archaeological evidence from some Mesopotamian temples, particularly those devoted to craft gods or ancestral cults, of ceremonial burials for parts of divine statues. Broken hands, lost eyes, shattered crowns, and yes, occasionally, discarded beards. They weren't thrown away, they were retired. You move toward the far corner of the garden where a priest, older bent but bright-eyed, is kneeling by a low stone slab. In front of him sits a wooden box open to reveal a braided metal beard dulled by age, its loops slightly flattened. He looks up and gestures gently. Care to help? You nod. Together in silence, you prepare the ritual. A cloth soaked in myrrh is passed over the beard, not to clean it, but to honor it. A few strands of barley are tucked beneath it, symbols of continuity, of what grows after death. And then the priest murmurs something you only half understand, worn by the god, touched by the priest, held by the world. Now rest. You lower the beard into the shallow cavity beside the stone. The earth smells rich and dark. When it lands, there's a soft thump. Final. Gentle. The priest covers it with a layer of sand, then pours a small stream of oil along the edge, and then he begins to laugh, quietly. Not out of mockery, but recognition. This one, he says, once fell off the statue of Enki during a spring storm, hit a scribe in the head, took 3 apologies and an extra offering to settle it. You grin. He continues, but it curled well, served us through 2 droughts. Once a child gave it a flower crown during the New Year's parade. You sit together in silence after that. Just the wind and the distant sound of a nighttime flute. Here's a quirky fringe detail. One broken bronze beard found in a temple cache had etched inside it, hidden from view. A short poem. I curled for the storm. I caught the wind. I bent for the voice of heaven. Whether it was carved by a priest or a bored artisan, no one knows. But it's beautiful. Historians still argue about whether these beard burials were symbolic acts of closure, or rooted in the belief that even the pieces of a divine image carried spirit. Perhaps both. Perhaps more. The priest rises with a grunt. Time to let it sleep, he says. You watch as he smooths the soil with his palm, then places a single smooth pebble atop it. No marker. No name. Just presence. Before you leave, he adds, when my own beard goes gray, I'll carve one last curl. Not for a statue. For myself. Just a little one. To tuck behind the shrine. That way, I'm never entirely forgotten. You thank him. Not with words, just with stillness. You exit the garden into the night. Above, stars shimmer. And in the quiet between breaths, you think, not all graves hold bodies. Some hold stories. Some hold curls. And some hold the echoes of prayers whispered into the braids of things once sacred, now sleeping. The night is fully upon you now, pressing soft and cool against your skin. Uruk is hushed. Not silent. No Mesopotamian city ever truly sleeps. But hushed, like a storyteller pausing just before the twist. You wander slowly along a street lined with shuttered shops and scattered pottery shards. The city's heartbeat has slowed. And yours has too. Ahead, an old shrine leans into the moonlight, its roof, partially collapsed walls cracked with age. It's no longer in use. Not officially. But someone has left a fresh palm frond at the entrance weighted with a stone. You step inside. It smells of dust, cedar, and time. The statue here is crumbling, its nose chipped, its arms missing. But the beard somehow is mostly intact. Curled, dark, dense with shadow. You sit quietly before it, letting your breathing slow to match the room's rhythm. Then, from the far end of the shrine, a figure appears. A scholar, by the look of him. Robes stained with ink, satchel bulging with tablets, eyes rimmed in fatigue and obsession. He doesn't notice you at first. He's talking to himself, or to the beard. No record of this variant, he mutters, crouching before the statue. 3 curls, then a split loop. And this isn't Enlil's pattern, or Asher's. Could it be Proto-Ei? He pulls out a clay fragment and holds it beside the beard. Same loop length, same notch spacing, but no inscription. You clear your throat gently. He startles. "Oh," he says. "Didn't see you there." You smile. Nod. He chuckles. "Sorry, I forget other people exist when the curls get interesting." You ask him what he's doing. Trying to piece together a beard lineage, he says. Not genealogy, not family trees, stylistic descent. Think of it like a chin-based evolution chart. He stands and dusts off his knees. There's evidence, fragments, reliefs, damaged tablets, that certain beard styles were passed down. Not just between gods, but between regions, dynasties, cults, even cultures. He paces a bit now, energized by his own theory. Take this statue. We think it was a minor river deity, local, worshipped for maybe a century, then absorbed into the Marduk cult. But the beard, it shows up again 200 years later, on a palace guardian in Lagash. You blink. You're saying the beard outlived the god. He grins. Exactly. And that's the idea, isn't it? Even when the gods fade, their curls linger. Mainstream historical fact motifs in beard design were often reused across generations and regions. The spiral-on-spiral technique seen on late Akkadian statuary resurfaces centuries later in Neo-Assyrian palace guards. Whether this was artistic inheritance, theological continuity, or simple fashion is still debated. The scholar rummages in his bag and pulls out a wax tablet filled with sketches, diagrams of beard types, curl lengths, schematic arrows. You spot labels like split triple loop Enki, flame curl associated with storm deities, side braid kink, possible trade route influence. He sighs and sits beside you. Historians still argue if this matters, he says. Some call it overreach. Beard theology, facial hair fetishism. He shrugs. But I think it's beautiful. We don't always know what these curls meant, but someone did. Someone once spent 4 hours sculpting a perfect twist in bronze, then cried when it broke. He looks up at the statue. They remembered things we've forgotten. The curls held codes. You sit in silence with him, watching the flickering oil lamp cast shadows across the ancient face. You wonder how many secrets are still wrapped in those curls. How many forgotten rituals. How many beliefs lost not because no one wrote them down, but because no one remembered how to read a beard. A quirky tidbit. One excavated workshop in Nippur yielded beard molds labeled not by deity, but by emotion. One was called Joyful Curl, another Anger Braid. Scholars debate whether these were practical categories or poetic flair. Either way, it proves this beard spoke. You just had to know how to listen. The scholar finally yawns, checks the moon, and gathers his things. He nods to you as he leaves. Thanks for listening. Most people don't. You nod back, then return your gaze to the statue and its patient, perfect curls. You realize something, then maybe the curls aren't just for gods. Maybe they're for us. We who forget, who lose the meaning, who return centuries later, chasing shadows and spirals, hoping the shape of a curl will lead us back to the feeling we once knew. You whisper a promise to remember, and leave the shrine just as dawn begins again. You walk through dawn's hush, the world tinted silver blue. The sky is pale and clean like a freshly wiped tablet. Even Uruk, so often a chorus of footfalls, market cries, and goat-related chaos feels reverent at this hour. The streets are nearly empty, save for one figure crouched in the middle of a wide avenue, brushing dust from something half-buried. You pause. It's an archaeologist. Not a modern one, of course. A Mesopotamian scribe archivist wrapped in layers of linen tools hanging from his belt. Eyes narrowed with practiced intensity. Another fragment, he mutters. Beard segment left cheek. Late Kassite period, I think. You crouch beside him. He gestures for you to help brush away the remaining soil. Together, you reveal a beautifully carved curl, still sharp despite centuries underground. It's part of a broken statue, half of its face missing. The lips are cracked. The eyes are gone. But the beard remarkably intact. The archivist sighs. We keep finding the beards. The rest fades, but these survive. He stands and brushes off his knees. You want to help with reconstruction? Of course you do. You follow him to a workshop near the old temple libraries. Inside, clay fragments, stone shards, and broken tablet bits are laid out like pieces of a dream waiting to be reassembled. And on one long table, a growing collection of beards, whole curls, broken loops, unidentifiable twists, each one catalogued, labeled, drawn in meticulous detail. Mainstream historical fact in modern excavations of Mesopotamian cities. Nippur. Babylon beards are one of the most commonly preserved statue components. Sculpted separately, or with pronounced relief, they often outlast the face's limbs and eyes they once adorned. Wide, denser stone, deeper grooves, and perhaps some divine sense of irony. You watch as the archivist carefully lays the curl fragment from this morning beside a partial jawline. He holds his breath. So do you. It fits. The curve slips into place with a soft click. Time restored. Fourth match this month, he says, voice thick with awe. We might rebuild the whole bust before the year turns. He gestures toward a larger work in progress, an enormous head missing most of its right side. The beard is mostly reconstructed, each piece carefully slotted into place like a stone jigsaw. One curl has been replaced with a clay copy clearly marked. We leave the replicas unpainted, he explains, so future generations know what was real. And there it is again, reverence, not just for the gods, but for the work, for the act of remembrance. You help him sort other pieces, tiny curls like river shells, long loops like frozen waves. Some are rough and unfinished, possibly training models. Others bear tool marks so fine they look brushed on. He shows you one fragment with an inscription hidden behind the curls. It reads, "To remake the face is to recall the name," a phrase you won't forget. Here's your quirky tidbit one. A Assyriologist once claimed that beard reconstruction could be used to guess the deity when no other features survived. By studying curl patterns, beard length, and carving depth, they matched orphaned fragments to deities' known stylistic traits. It's been jokingly called beard forensics. Historians still argue whether this is reliable science or devotional witchcraft. But in this room, it feels sacred. You help place another fragment into a storage box labeled Pending South Wall Finds. The archivist seals it with care. He then unrolls a sketch in an attempt to recreate what one of the fully lost statues might have looked like, based only on its surviving beard. The drawing is delicate, suggestive. A face conjured from curls. You know, he says, sometimes I think the beard is the identity. He doesn't have to explain, you understand now. Because when everything else erodes stone memory language, the beard remains. A language of loops. A record in spirals. A faith carved into the most stubborn part of the body. As the sun rises outside, golden light fills the workshop. The beard fragments glow faintly. You step into the doorway, look back, and take in the room. Shelves, tables, curls waiting patiently to be returned to their stories. And you think, this is archaeology. Not digging for treasure, but piecing back dignity, one curl at a time. The day unfolds slowly, as if the city itself is reluctant to move too quickly beneath the mounting summer heat. You step out of the workshop and wander east toward the riverbank where the world opens wide again. The Tigris moves slowly, more mud than water this season, but it still glimmers, and it still carries things. Fish reeds, boats, secrets. You follow the shoreline north past fishermen hauling nets, past children skipping stones, past priests offering bread to the spirits of the current. The sun bakes the sand until it cracks like old clay tablets, and then you see them, dozens of them, statues, half buried in the mud, some with faces, some without, all with beards. You step closer, and a man with a reed hat raises his hand in greeting. "You're here for the river gods," he asks. You nod. He gestures wide. These were taken long ago, looted, cast into the river by foreign kings, broken by floods, lost in storms. But the water always returns them. He points to one. The face is gone, eroded smooth, but the beard remains intact, slick with river silt. They come back piece by piece. The gods reclaim themselves. Mainstream historical fact during times of conquest. Assyrian raids, Persian expansions, even local rebellions. It was common for invaders to destroy or deface temple statues. Many were dragged to the riverbanks and thrown into water as a symbolic act of dethroning. But the rivers, patient and sly, preserved what they could. Beards particularly often re-emerged centuries later in fishing nets, buried in mud banks, or exposed by seasonal floods. You step among the fallen forms. Some are seated, others toppled sideways. A few lean on each other as if remembering they were once revered. You crouch beside one with a short layered beard, the curls delicate, etched with a grace that seems almost impossible given the chisel marks. A bronze ring still dangles from the left ear. The man in the hat sits beside you. "We don't put them back in temples," he says. "Not anymore. We build shelters." You follow him to a nearby awning, a low canopy of palm leaves and woven rushes. Beneath it, rescued statue fragments have been placed on padded stone blocks. A few villagers are gently brushing dried silt off a massive stone beard the size of a watermelon. It gleams faintly beneath the dust. There's no ritual here, no fanfare, just care. Someone places a small bowl of honeyed barley nearby. An offering. A girl, no older than 10, lights a single oil wick and places it in front of one statue's beard. The fire flickers, casting gentle shadows across the ancient curls. "We remember them," the reed-hatted man says. "Not because they were gods, but because they were." A pause. Here, and now, and once. You sit with them as more villagers arrive not to worship, but to witness. They come in the cool of morning and the hush of evening, cleaning, cataloging, sometimes just watching the curls catch light. A quirky tidbit from a riverbank tablet once found in Lagash. The water may take the mouth and eyes, but never the voice of the chin. Scholars still argue if that line was poetic or procedural. But the sentiment remains: the beard holds the spirit. One old woman leans against a fallen statue and sings a lullaby in a dialect you don't know. A child next to her giggles and pretends to braid the stone curls with bits of grass. And you realize something. These statues aren't ruined. They're returned. They're survivors. The beards may be moss-streaked, dulled, chipped, but they remain. Resilient, unbending. Testament. You close your eyes for a moment and let the river sounds blur with the laughter, the brush of leaves, the low coo of doves on a nearby roof. When you open them, the sun has begun to shift again. A final glint dances across a curled stone braid. You stand and whisper a promise not to restore them, but to remember them. Because even when toppled, forgotten, or drowned, a beard remembers, and memory rises. You return to the city as twilight unfurls above you, the sky melting from gold into a bruised violet. Lamps flicker into life one by one, as if the stars are rehearsing for their entrance by taking cues from below. Your path winds gently past temple walls that glow with old soot, past rooftops where cats stretch and yawn, past doorways where grandmothers murmur to grandchildren about gods that once walked the earth in bronze sandals and scented curls. Tonight there is one final place to visit. You climb a narrow stone stairway along the inner wall of the great ziggurat. It rises like a mountain built by human hands, layer after layer of intention, hope, tribute. Up here the air is thinner, cooler, quiet. You reach the top and step into a small observation room. In the center is a statue, modern by temple standards, but still ancient to you. He sits cross-legged, carved of dark stone, his beard curling down his chest in a style you now recognize. Storm-tiered, divinely symmetrical, dignified, and still somehow warm. You sit beside him. No crowd, no chanting, just the wind and the whisper of everything you've seen. Mainstream historical fact. Even as Mesopotamian empires fell, Sumerian to Akkadian, Akkadian to Babylonian, Babylonian to Assyrian, and so on. The art of beards continued. New styles emerged. Old ones were revived. Statues changed, but the curls remained. Some gods changed names. Some kings changed dynasties. But the beard endured. You think of the temples, the shrines, the ceremonies. You think of the noblewomen wearing beard wigs in Inanna's rites, the festival contestants and their laughter, the foreigner who borrowed a beard to belong, the barbers who whispered blessings with each comb, the archivist reconstructing faith curl by curl, the fragments the river could not swallow, the grave where a single piece was tucked gently into sleep, the beard again and again showing up like a signature in time's margins. You close your eyes, and you listen. There is no voice, but you hear something deeper. like a presence behind the silence, like a hand steadying your thoughts, like the memory of someone you never met, who still left something just for you. A curl, a spiral, a story. You exhale. And now at last it's time. So now here you are, high above the city that once sang to gods with braided beards. The winds are soft now, gentle like a mother smoothing down a child's hair before sleep. The statues rest, the workshops are silent, and even the barber's razors are tucked away. The curls once bold and shining have dimmed in the moonlight, but they remain. In shadow, in stone, in memory, you let the stillness wrap around you like a shawl. And as you sit there, you realize something simple, something soft. The world forgets fast, but some things resist being forgotten, not because they shout, but because they curl inward again and again like breath returning to breath, like prayers wrapping around silence. You feel your body settle, heavier now, slower. Your thoughts unwinding, gently looping once, then twice, then softer. The gods don't need statues anymore, but maybe they still like being remembered. Maybe they sit beside you now, quiet and smiling, proud of the curls you carried through the night. You take one more breath, long, warm, and you let go of the day. Let go of the thoughts. Let go of the remembering. The beard is in place. The light is low, and everything is ready for sleep.